thank you, Luca. Thank you to the community. Sorry for that quick interruption. I was like, okay, yeah, tonight is going to be determined whether or not Basel will be completely dropped. No. So from my side, so when it comes to data, but when you speak about Basel III, you effectively speak about data that is used for regulatory purposes in terms of complying with the reporting requirements, doing correct, adhering to accounting standards, and so forth. And effectively, what you need to exclude on that is effectively the certain types of data, effectively reference data that comes from the prospectus, term sheet that we all include in our databases. You of course include the NTT and HTT data that is made available via the different issuers and via the ECBC website. And we have also with us the Sven, which is our cover bond data manager. And so when it comes to cover bonds and Basel, you effectively, what you need to do, or what our clients do on a daily basis or on a regular basis, is to, okay, are these cover bonds confirming with the regulatory requirements that effectively meet the criteria of the articles, the paragraphs, and conditions that are set in the regulations. And then when you effectively go into designing a product around that, is do we have the data? Is the data fit for purpose? And is there a way to automate and analyze that systemically? When it comes to then implementing it and implementing the process to confirm that our interpretation or the interpretation of the data that we create for Basel reporting purposes is fit for purpose, then we include industry opinions and feedback from different clients. And then, of course, there are amendments. Currently, we are at Basel III, then comes Basel 3.1. Again, as previously said by my speakers before me, is effectively, we speak about Basel 3.1, we speak about Basel Endgame, and effectively it's all to determine whether there's enough whether there is enough data to do a final determination to confirm that the data is fit for purpose. Sorry for that, I just needed. So when it comes to all the processes with respect to Basel, there the three main pillars that we have is the LCR, as in the liquidity risk side. We have the market risk side, and we have the credit risk side. And so when we effectively create the classifications, we effectively make sure that on a daily basis the data is correct. You need to make sure that the data doesn't change. You need to make sure that any changes day to day are valid. You effectively need to maintain your databases. You effectively need to deliver the product on the base on the yeah, you effectively need to have a dedicated team that can reply to any confirmations or any client demands. You effectively need to maintain your understanding and confirm your understanding in terms of what the market needs, what your client needs, and you need to be transparent about the same thing. And it helps that the process is certified by a leading certifications and an auditor. When it comes to liquidity risk, some of the most important questions that we always get is, and I here displayed 3 specific examples of questions that we always get. In terms of the cover bond example 1, you see that it is covered by a national framework, is 500 million insurance. The cover pool composition is of a residential property, so it's one of the authorized collateral classes in the cover pool of the associated cover bond, and this is on the security level. And when you look at the regulation, you effectively need to look at the articles, the paragraphs, and each gives the different criteria that effectively you need data for to confirm that they either comply or they're not complying with the respective criteria. And here you can see and we took the 4 main the 4 main jurisdictions from our perspective that were for which we get the most questions on the Bloomberg side. With respect to the cover bond example 2, you see that there are different criteria that are met, and so the jurisdictions they classify the instrument differently. And here you can see that the main changer is the issue size, where you can see that it's changing from 250 million to from 500 million to 250 million on the compared the first to the second example, and effectively this data is important that when we extract it from the entities or the HTTs, that when we do when we do the assessment, that we check it always against the regulation. So when between quarters or when the entity is reported, then we re-evaluate and our clients re-evaluate the data if the cover bond indeed is again fit for purpose to be included in the liquidity buffer. With respect to the third example, the Basel III says it needs to be covered by a cover bond framework, and in this case, it is not. While it meets the issue size criteria and the commercial public loans and the commercial and public cover pool composition, it does, however, not fit on one side that it is covered by a cover bond framework, and on the other side, the over collateralization is also below the requirement of the regulator as such, you can see that in all of the jurisdictions, it's actually not eligible. The LTV on the commercial side might actually be correct. However, that is outside of the purview. Well, not outside of the purview, but it is actually not compliant in this case because it's because the framework example doesn't exist, or the framework prerequisite doesn't exist. As you can see, it's not eligible everywhere. The reason why from the US is also because under the US interpretation, cover bonds are not to be included in the liquidity buffer. What I wanted to describe in this slide specifically is that a lot of factors, 20 plus, can actually affect the use of a cover bond in the respective liquidity buffer. And having that information up to a certain degree of transparency is actually important to the daily task of investors and market participants. From all of the instruments for which we do the tests, the cover bonds getting more questions in terms of is the data accurate, and what do we return in terms of eligibility? Is it actually fit for purpose on one end, and why have we on the Bloomberg side done that determination? And so we go back to the regulation and say, well, the regulation says X, and the data says Y in terms of what we extracted from the official documentation, from what we discovered or read in the regulation, and effectively each specific each respective data point that is included in official documents has an implication to the attractiveness of the cover bond, respectively representation of the cover pool itself with respect to the cover pool composition. When it comes to data availability, in terms of Basel III, there's only so much that a data provider can do, or without going into the qualitative, non-systematic way. Here you can see the 6 most queried data categories in terms of what makes the determination of a cover bond eligibility for liquidity risk purposes, respectively, to be included in the liquidity buffer. And as such, everything that is beyond that, specifically about value that my speakers before me spoke about, everything that needs to be checked by the investor or by the market participant in order for them to be able to use it for due diligence purposes, also for resource purposes, in terms of all of the tests that need to be done on a quarterly / semi-annually perspective, or even daily perspective, the data needs to be available for that, and the data still needs to comply with the requirement in different articles. When it goes into the requirements and specific conditions within the requirements that are not available, then investors or market participants in general need to actually add a lot of resources to do research outside or on an ad hoc basis in terms of data that is available by the markets, made available by the market in the HTT or NTTs. That helps clients, and that helps us to provide to our clients the necessary data for them to systematically approach the subject of determining whether a cover bond is fit for purpose or fit for the liquidity risk or the liquidity buffer. So this is the same thing, but with respect to the market risk. One of the things on the market risk is under Basel, the shipping is actually not mentioned as an eligible collateral, and as such, it falls into the categorization of not a cover bond, but an exposure to the credit institution. And if you do that for like if you look at the cover bond composition and what the articles say with respect to what it can include, then you effectively need to determine the standardized bucketing under the standardized approach for market risk. You effectively need to bucket it as an exposure to credit institution. Here you've got a rating, but if you wouldn't have a rating, you then also need to mark it higher in terms of the risk weights and the default risk weights. With respect to the credit risk or the standardized approach, where we help on the classification side, we effectively do it on the same basis that we did the previous test, and the same basis that all of our clients would do all the tests. They effectively would look at all the details, all the criteria that the different articles or the paragraphs state, and they would then look at, okay, do we have the necessary data in order to do the final tests, or do we need to add, again, as per my previous statement, ad hoc resources or increase our resources to make sure that an instrument, a cover bond, is eligible or represents the preferential credit risk rating. If certain, such as the rating, if the rating, for example, wouldn't be available, then you need to have the access to the issuing credit institution. And as my previous speaker said, you effectively then need to apply almost a look-through approach, where you go not on the instrument itself, but you go on to the issuer rating. If, for example, for the third bond, because it is not classified under a cover bond framework, you effectively need to classify it then as an exposure to the credit institution, and so the preferential treatment is foregone. And that indicates that you effectively, without a credit rating, you effectively need to do the new approach in terms of the assessing whether the credit institutions has the published buffer or credit ratios in terms of in terms of the grade A, B, and C assessment. Under the new Basel 3.1 or Basel Endgame assessment. And if, for example, the 5,000 smaller institutions in that my speaker before me mentioned, if they are small by nature, they not necessarily have published their Pillar 3 reports or liquidity reports, and as such, it's very, very difficult to then confirm a non-higher risk weight, a 30 or 40, 75 or 50 risk weight instead of 150% risk weight. With respect to cover bonds, as I said before, we do an assessment on the data that is available, but certain data, because of their nature, is not available to most data providers, so it is still in the hands of the market participant as such. yeah, that's any questions, you're free to ask now or later.
Thank you very much.